Morning, everybody. Thanks so much for coming out. We really appreciate to see such a good crowd for this, and we're really excited about the topic for today's presentation. We're very pleased to announce three presenters for this presentation that will be doing kind of a tag team here. The first is Hillary Dvorak, who's a principal city planner with the city of Minneapolis. She's been in that with the city for 15 years and has worked on a number of notable projects, most recently the Wells Fargo Ryan project, which is part of the discussion that will be going on today. She did attend the University of Minnesota for urban studies. She'll be followed by Jeff Handeland, who's a principal professional engineer in the Public Works Department at the City of Minneapolis. He's been there for 8 years now and is the Public Works liaison to the stadium project, and so he'll be sharing some of those, some of that information here today. He's also the supervisor of city street design, and he attended the University of Minnesota for civil engineering. Finally, we have Jim Harwood with Metro Transit, where he is a principal engineer. He's been there for 4.5 years now, and in addition to some of the work with the Downtown East development, he's also worked on the 35W transit access study. He attended UW-Madison, so a couple, not sure who people will be rooting for in the game tonight, but hopefully most of them will be on the purple side of the board. So please help me welcoming Hillary as our first presenter.
Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. As Paul said, I'm Hillary Dvorak with the City of Minneapolis. I'm in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department. I am not an engineer. With me today is Jeff Handeland from the City of Minneapolis Public Works Department and Jim Harwood with Metro Transit. We are here this morning to talk about the public planning and engineering coordination process that has taken place in Downtown East as a result of the new Minnesota Multi-Purpose Stadium project. And we want to thank Paul Morris from SRF for inviting us here this morning. For over 30 years, the Metrodome and a sea of surface parking lots have dominated the landscape in Downtown East. However, since the approval of the new stadium, this area has become very popular and it has gained a lot of attention with developers. The city has approved or has been engaged in conversations about a number of development projects. I was supposed to be clicking. So the stadium, the Ryan development, the Commons Park that is going to be constructed, and then everything in red are new projects that have either been approved or are in the pipeline to be approved by the city. And if realized, we would have 930 dwelling units, 130 hotel rooms, and 1.8 million square feet of office or commercial space built in Downtown East, which would be a vast change from what has happened in the last 30 years. In addition to new development, there are several transportation projects occurring in Downtown East. There's a new northbound ramp from 4th Street to 35W North under construction. Washington Avenue between Hennepin and 5th Street is being redesigned. The design will have a new vehicle lane and add a cycle track behind each curb. We have a new exit ramp from westbound 94 onto 7th Street being built next year. And this will allow for a repurposing of the existing exit ramp from 94 onto 5th Street. And it's anticipated that 5th Street will be used as a local connection between downtown and the Cedar Riverside neighborhood. And I'm sure many of you in this room have been involved in all of those projects. So for some history on how we got to the construction site that you see today, in May of 2012, Governor Dayton signed legislation related to the construction of a National Football League stadium in Minnesota. The legislation tasked the City of Minneapolis with establishing a stadium implementation committee who is charged to make recommendations on the design plans submitted for the stadium infrastructure and related improvements. The stadium site was defined and needed to be defined for legislation purposes, and that's shown within the red lines on the screen, and it's between Park Avenue and 11th Avenue, and then 3rd and 6th Streets. Stadium infrastructure included plazas and parking structures, skyways and tunnels, and any other property owned by the authority or determined by the authority to facilitate the use of the new stadium. The Implementation Committee's recommendation was to be forwarded to the Planning Commission for an advisory recommendation and then to the City Council in one single action. And this is important because this is different than any other review that is established in the city for development projects. So the stadium was reviewed and approved through an alternative land use review that was dictated by that legislation that waived otherwise applicable regulations. So no zoning regulations were applied to the stadium. So if you don't already know, the stadium is 1.5 million square feet in size. There are 65,000 seats with the expansion space for up to 73,000 seats for events such as the Super Bowl. And at the prow of the building, it's 272 feet tall, which is equivalent to a 27-story building. Grant Park and Skyscape in Elliott Park, just near the stadium site, are 27 stories. So for visual purpose, that's how tall this building will be. And for reference, the former Metrodome at the peak of the roof was 195 feet tall. So this is going to be much larger than the former Metrodome was. The Implementation Committee in 2012 adopted a vision and a set of principles for purposes of establishing parameters for its review because there were no zoning code regulations to help its review. And the adopted vision was the best urban football stadium in the country at the core of a vibrant place. A total of 73 principles were adopted, ranging from building design to regional influence. And then in August of 2013, the Implementation Committee forwarded a recommendation to the City of Minneapolis to approve a request by the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority to construct the new stadium. So the principles that were adopted, I'm going to go through them and just give you an idea of what we were tasked with looking at when coordinating with the different parties involved. So for building design, the principles called for a stadium and a stadium site that was bold and iconic, that fit in with its surroundings, that didn't turn its back to any of the surrounding streets, and that used landscaping to soften the edges of the building. We really wanted something that was different than what the Metrodome provided. And as you can see, that is what the Metrodome provided for over 30 years. So the site and plaza design principles required stronger pedestrian connections to the surrounding neighborhoods, the ability to walk all the way around the stadium, a plaza that is a destination every day of the year, not just on event days, and that we incorporate public art into the site and into the building. There were many sustainability goals for the new stadium, including meeting the B3 Minnesota Sustainability Building Guidelines, pursuing LEED ND for new construction, incorporating best management practices for stormwater into the sites, and coordinating a waste and recycling program within the facility itself. The desire of the Implementation Committee was that the new stadium would fit in better with its surrounding neighborhoods, that the stadium would encourage other development in the area, and I think it's done that already, that the stadium would promote more activity at the street level at all hours of the day, not just on event days, that the stadium would program the plaza activities for people of all ages and at other times other than on event days, and that the stadium project would enhance the streetscape experience in the area. The transportation principles called for integration with the existing Downtown East Light Rail Transit Station, improved walking, biking, and transit connections in the area, a reduction in the amount of surface parking, and improved connections to the regional freeway system. And the regional principles related to the region, the principles related to the region encourage sustainable, long economic growth and development, supporting diversity in the local workforce, and encouraging business retention and expansion. And I took this picture from the Hoff Ramp, which is a parking garage on the along 5th Street downtown. And if anyone gets an opportunity to go over into this area, it really is amazing to see how many cranes are out there right now. And this is the Wells Fargo project, and then the stadium project is in the background. And every week there is progress. And so it really is amazing, and the whole landscape looks different. So I'm now going to turn it over to Jeff Handeland from the City of Minneapolis, who's going to talk in more detail about the transportation policies. Thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. So I'm Jeff Handeland. I am an engineer. So Paul Morris invited my planner friend Hillary to come do this presentation, and Hillary extended the invitation to me. I've heard of ITE, but actually I got to admit I hadn't necessarily heard of NCITE. So I called up my engineer friend Jonette, and Jonette seemed to know about it in these meetings. And so now I'm here, and all my engineer friends are here, and there's yummy food. And there's like a casino event coming up. So, you know, my phone number and stuff will be at the end. So, Hillary mentioned the stadium, the city implementation committee's principles, or some of them for the stadium. I got to remember not to get too far from this laptop for the webinar. So, when it came to transportation, city staff helped translate some of the city implementation committee's principles into some transportation-related goals. So I'll tell you just a few of them, starting out with some pedestrian-oriented things. And here's kind of in blue the, you know, just kind of my drawing arrows of some key pedestrian connections through the site. And then in green, a lot of existing bike lanes and some new bike paths that are going to cut through the stadium site. So one of the principles translated into a goal that was to be sure that pedestrians would be able to walk all the way around the stadium. And that was a little bit tricky because Chicago Avenue is about 15 feet higher than 11th Avenue. And the stadium designers wanted all the fans to be able to enter the stadium at the main concourse level. So that meant in order to make their main large plaza a 2% grade from 11th Avenue, they had to have some steps and ramps and things to get down to 11th Avenue. But you can walk all the way around the stadium. Along those lines also, you can walk on the public sidewalks from 4th Avenue to Chicago to 5th Avenue, or 5th Street to 11th Avenue, but then 11th Avenue overpasses 4th. So we worked with, you know, city staff worked with the stadium design consultants to make sure there is an on-street or an on-site walkway that connected those two public sidewalks. And then also city staff worked with the stadium designers to minimize the number of driveways and locate the remaining ones next to street intersections. And there are some important things about that. The stadium designers needed to ensure security for the stadium site and ensure adequate access for loading docks for deliveries and drop-offs. And they also, you know, worked with us to help balance the neighborhood goal for pedestrian connectivity and having the stadium fit in with the neighborhood 365 days a year. So since the site walkways follow the driveways, it was important to us that driveways weren't too far from the intersections so that the pedestrian routes weren't too circuitous. Now to tell you about the next transportation puzzle involved with the stadium coordination with the city, I'd like to back up to kind of the existing transportation configuration along the south side of the stadium. 5th Street and 6th Street are one-way pairs. 6th Street carries about 9,000 cars a day onto the eastbound entrance ramp for Freeway 94. And 5th Street carries about the same number off the westbound exit until they get to 11th Avenue. Then most cars turn left or right on 11th Avenue. But there are about 3,000 cars a day that continue westbound on 5th Street along the south side. So when the stadium authority told us that they needed city's property for 5th Street to make room for the large stadium and its site with its security perimeter, we knew we didn't need to panic. We knew that 5th Street probably had some extra capacity, and also it was starting to look more and more likely that 7th Street that Hillary mentioned would be replacing 5th Street as the westbound Freeway 94 exit. But we did decide that it was important to have a westbound connection at this location, just for ease of access to downtown, some of the downtown properties, and for the value inherent in the redundancy of the downtown transportation grid. So we thought, looking at the existing configuration here at street level, here's 6th Street in the background and 5th Street up front here. So 6th Street had 3 eastbound car lanes, 1 eastbound bike lane, and parking on the south side. 5th Street had 2 westbound travel lanes and a parking lane. So 8 lanes of traffic makes a long distance for pedestrians to cross. So the existing concrete jersey barrier and chain link fence are probably a good safety measure to just prevent that hazard. But it does mean that there was no pedestrian crossings for 3 blocks, and there was the neighborhood goal to improve connectivity. So we started to look at, with stadium designers at the opportunities. Maybe we didn't need both those westbound lanes on 5th Street. Maybe we could take that bike lane off street. Maybe that bike use would be able to fit behind the stadium's retaining wall that establishes the security perimeter, and bikes can't carry fertilizer bombs. So maybe that would reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians, and then we decided that full signal systems will be installed at 9th Avenue, or actually Carew Drive, and 10th Avenue to further ensure pedestrian safety. So here's what that looks like in a cross-section of the existing 6th Street and 5th Street over the proposed planned configuration for 6th Street. So basically the difference is there's 1 less westbound travel lane, there's 1 less parking lane, and then again the bike facility goes off-street behind the retaining wall that establishes the stadium security perimeter. One good thing that this did was this established a bike route in both directions, which advanced the Minneapolis Bike Master Plan, since we had in the plan to have a westbound facility, but we didn't have that established yet. So this will establish that westbound facility. The other thing is I'm saying that this is Minneapolis's first K-12 rated barrier protected bikeway. So this will stop an attacking truck from getting you on your bike here. So, and then to tell you, and then one more thing about this is the stadium authority was willing to extend that westbound facility on an extra block past Chicago Avenue to Park Avenue to make a additional transportation connection so that you have more options just turning left or right on Chicago Avenue. So here it is along that block, and between Chicago and Park is the county's medical examiner building. So right now I'm working with Dean McElko to get some input from the county on the design of this to make sure that it's we can figure out who will maintain what, and in working with Dean to implement a city easement for this bike facility on county property. So you can see we're pretty close to a solution on the 5th and 6th Street puzzle. The next really big puzzle that we're working on solving has to do with the light rail trains, taking Vikings fans to and from the games, and with the intersection of the game day pedestrians with those light rail trains. So to tell you about that, I'd like to hand this over now to Jim Harwood from Metro Transit.
Thanks, Jeff. Again, I'm Jim Harwood, Metro Transit. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Downtown East Light Rail Station. The station itself is it's an important part of the light rail system. It serves both the blue and green lines in downtown Minneapolis. It's also the initial point of transfer between the two lines, so it does see some significant use in that regard as well. But it's also an important part of those folks attending these events and their travel plans to get to and from the stadium, just due to its location directly across Chicago Avenue. We know that in 2013, last season, for Vikings games at the Metrodome, we averaged about 10.5% of those fans going to the games took the blue line to get there. That was about just over 6,700 of those going to the games of the overall attendance. And that's projected to go up to 42% from the mode split, with now the opening of the green line and then the future green and blue line extensions. So that's about just over 26,000 up from the 6,700 attendees. So obviously there's some significant planning efforts that need to be looked at to accommodate that ridership. And I can say that so far this year at TCF Stadium, we've averaged, between the two regular season games, we've taken just over 24% of the overall attendance is taken come via the green line to the University Village Station there. So we do feel we're on our way to reaching those ridership goals projected. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of planning and efforts involved to accommodate that high projected ridership. The first of which is really just providing appropriate signage and wayfinding to direct people to the platforms, to the queuing areas, and making sure those are provided at the right locations, both at the platform and around in the plaza areas. And the second of which is developing queuing spots, spaces that allow us to really manage those queuing operations to speed people to the platforms and then on their way out to their final destinations. And if you look at the picture in the bottom left, you can see a queuing area that's from actually a recent game just outside. That picture was taken from inside TCF Stadium, I believe, and it can kind of show you the throngs of people and the importance of really managing that correctly. And we are currently working with the property owner, the Minnesota Sports Facility Authority, as they develop the plaza adjacent to the light rail station to ensure that the queuing and other transit operation needs are really incorporated in that to accommodate that ridership. And the second piece, when it related to that ridership and how we achieve that, is really the service itself. Currently, we operate blue and green line. Blue and green line each operate on 10-minute headways in regular Avenue service. That means there's 5-minute combined headways at each platform. And at special events such as the games, we introduce additional three-car consists, additional trains into the system, and we stage those and introduce those into the system at specific times to really relieve those queues as they start to form and increase. And those headways and that frequency that I just mentioned, with at less than 5 minutes in each direction post-event, really lead to the next big transit issue, which is the pedestrian LRT interactions, and pedestrian LRT conflicts. Pedestrian studies that were done by some folks in this room as part of the stadium planning and some of the transit coordination do show that of that 65,000 capacity, about 21,200 people need to cross the light rail to get to their final destinations. And it's also known from those studies that in those close game scenarios where people stay to that final whistle, about 70% of the attendees actually leave during that first peak 15 minutes. So that's a significant amount of people needing to cross the light rail in a very short period of time. And what that looks like on the street level is this. We know in 2013, you can see the picture on the right taken in a game back at the Metrodome, post-game. We know it takes about 55 seconds from observations to close down the intersection the way it's been managed to date and have a train move through. As you can see, in 2013, there was about 3 to 4 based on just Blue Line service trains that would come in that first 15 minutes. Well, it's anticipated with the extensions of the Blue and Green Line and the trains required to accommodate that ridership, that number would grow to about 8 trains, a train every 2 minutes. And what that leaves is about a 65-second window where we're trying to cross 2,100 pedestrians across the light rail. And that then is repeated every 2 minutes for a significant period of time, which is at least a significant safety concerns. It's really not achievable from an operations standpoint to repeat that. And leads to, again, safety concerns and also a lot of operations concerns on how do you manage that and how do you not cause delays which start to come up not only to post-event operations but actually all the way through the system itself. So as we've been looking at ways to work through this and provide a solution to that in terms of the pedestrian LRT crossing, we've been currently looking in and proposing to engineer and design a pedestrian bridge that would significantly mitigate that crossing issue by taking folks out of that by providing a grade separated crossing and taking folks away from that conflict. It does significantly mitigate the safety concerns, and it also would allow for unimpeded rail service, which really is necessary to achieve the frequency and ridership numbers. One of the ways that we want to work with the city on how we handle that has to do with some of the post-event street closures, specifically at 4th and Chicago, which is, if anybody's been to a game and come out right on that intersection at the Dome over the past few years, know how trying of a situation it can be to try to get where you're trying to go. And obviously with the increase in frequency, even today with Green Line, that would be significantly worse. So, as I mentioned, post-event street closures would be a part of this, and that's something that Jeff now I think is going to talk about related to the event traffic management plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So one of the next big puzzles that'll need to be addressed is the event traffic management plan. So the stadium authority is going to take the lead and coordinate with the city and other appropriate agencies to establish event traffic management plan that addresses all modes of transportation to get to and from the stadium. So the plan will need to include a special event signal timing plan. It'll need to figure out where and what types of wayfinding should be installed with the new stadium project, maybe fixed wayfinding, maybe also variable message signs. It'll need to include traffic control agencies and figure out where traffic control officers should be placed to help the flow of traffic and traffic safety on game days. It should include a curbside management plan and figure out where charter buses should stage and taxis should stage. And as Jim mentioned, figure out where to close streets for temporary closures on game days for stadium security and for safety on game days. So that's one of the next big challenges ahead. And to wrap this up, I'd like to turn it over to Hillary to mention one or two more.
I was trying to tell Jeff that he could just finish this off because it's really what's on the slide. So our challenges ahead are working with the MSFA to complete the traffic management plan. It really is up to them to get that going, and the city will obviously need to review and approve it, but they are the lead on that plan. We need to figure out tailgating. I don't have any news for you on where you can tailgate in 2016, but there is a committee established at the city to work with the MSFA and the team about where people will be able to grill and throw footballs, and just the integration of other development projects in downtown East. The major project under construction now, the Wells Fargo Ryan development, they did an AUAR and the stadium went through an EIS project. Both of those had, the major component of both of those was the travel demand management planning, the coordination of those. We learned a lot from doing the travel demand management plan for the Ryan project after we had just completed the one for the stadium. And if we have any other major projects, really major projects downtown, the compilation of all of those will be pulled together. So as I had started off, there's a lot going on down here, and we're hoping that trend continues, and this area of downtown will look nothing like it did when the Metrodome was there. So this is who we are, and we're here for questions. So I'd like Jeff and Jim to come back up.
Great. Well, let's thank them for the presentation. Yeah, thanks so much, Hillary. We do have some time for questions here, and because we do also have some participants over the webinar, if you ask your question, I'll do my best to try to repeat that so that they can hear it through the laptop here, and then allow our presenters to respond to those questions. So, any questions?
And maybe should we just reiterate that, you know, Hillary and Jim and I are kind of some public agency liaison coordinator people with, you know, we help take all the input from our subject matter experts at our agencies and coordinate it with, you know, stadium implementation committee members and city council members and try to help the stadium designers for the stadium authority consider those things as they design the stadium. So that's the way I see this. We actually have some stadium designers in the audience too, so if the questions get tough, we're going to be going to our lifelines, John and Pat and Junette and Roger. Yeah. Mike?
Hi, so you mentioned closing the 4th in Chicago on game days. Has that already been done for Vikings games next season? So, I mean, I guess how many do you think you could get away with, you know, each year for special events?
Yeah, good question. So the question was about the closure at 4th and Chicago on game days, and whether that's been done before and how that works. I had a question about that myself, given that the investment's being made at the 4th Street to northbound 35W on-ramp, that, you know, is that kind of a conflict that those two things are happening.
Thanks. And can we go to a slide within
by all means.
within our so yes, 4th and Chicago is, I can't find a cursor here. 4th and Chicago is currently closed with the Metrodome configuration. 4th and Chicago is closed on game days currently, and that's not expected to change. There'd be far too, you know, there's enough complication between the pedestrians and trains at 4th and Chicago, so I'm sure that won't open back up to cars. So then, you know, as Paul kind of, you know, led the next part of that question to is, you know, it'd be nice to be able to utilize the northbound ramp to 35W that the county is currently taking the lead on from 4th Street. It'd be nice to be able to utilize that for game day traffic, because Washington Avenue is just a parking lot on game day. So there has been, you know, some ideas about that, and who knows, that could be, you know, a next puzzle to be solved. There is some interest at it from, I think, the Vikings and maybe the city is, you know, maybe there's a way to configure a section of 3rd Avenue to be two-way and have an opportunity for vehicles to take park or something over to a two-way 3rd Street, and then make a connection down here between 3rd Street and 4th Street, so that vehicles could stay away from this tricky spot, stay out of the stadium security perimeter, and make it onto northbound 35W. So there have been some discussions. Maybe there'll be more. That could be another puzzle that might be added to the mix.
Yeah, really, that would be, I mean, that's what the event traffic management plan is intended to do, is really define a lot of that, how those event days, how the street network and the transportation networks do their work. You should probably be over there so they can
Yeah, come on over. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, well, probably a lifeline question. This is probably the most intense pedestrian activity right now for game day. I mean, in Minnesota, how's the modeling being done for kind of the transit pedestrian interaction, or is it back to the we see some of the higher pedestrian models and the lessons learned doing that.
Thanks, Mike. So the question was about with the heavy pedestrian and transit interaction, what types of modeling and software tools are being used to evaluate that condition?
So you're right, that's a lifeline question. So that gets into more detail than I'm prepared to go into. So yeah, I don't really have the answer to that kind of detail of what method is being used. I mean, Jim showed a slide where it had some green arrows with some volumes coming out of it, but I'm not familiar with the details of how those were exactly calculated.
John Mark, do you want to? I know you.
I don't want to put you on the spot, John Mark. If you want to dive in, come up so the webinar can hear you.
Yeah, we would have lots to say we did baseball on it or region modeling or one of the more advanced software. But in this case, it's always a case of horses for courses. There was a lot of discussion whether we use highway capacity manual or transit quality service manual. So it was in the end macro Excel spreadsheet. The pedestrian routing is not that complex, so you don't need to see traffic simulation. We relied a lot on experience working in transit, airports, other stadiums where we use similar models. There's value in graphics, and I wish we had the chance to do that, especially with the consultation. But at the end of the day, you do your best with what is on the budget and with the answer. So that's what we did. It was mainly transit figures, like treated like a transit station. At the end of the day, with the search that we're talking about, that's what we did.
Good. Thanks, John Mark, for jumping in there. Any other questions from the audience? So, yeah, John.
You mentioned that there's traffic signals for pedestrians on 6, signals for that. Are they full traffic signals or some sort of pedestrian signal?
Yeah, so John is asking about the design of the traffic signals along 6th Street to help with the pedestrian movements on the south side of the stadium.
So I've got lifelines if I need them, but I think I can handle this one. So basically for the purposes of pedestrian safety, I think we all agreed it was key to have some kind of at least pedestrian flasher. Rectangular rapid flashing beacons were considered. And then at the end of the day, we decided that it was valuable to have full traffic signal systems just to be consistent with the rest of the traffic control system downtown, so that would be something people are used to downtown and expecting downtown. So that's why it's full signal systems at Carew and 10th.
Very good. Yeah, Jeanette.
I'm going to use this one. Have you decided what Kirby Bucket Place is in your name to?
Okay, so for the webinar people, the question is about street naming, and if the existing one block of Chicago Avenue in front of the Metrodome is also has the name Kirby Puckett Place, and we are working with the team, and no details on that yet, but don't be surprised if there's a motion to rename that something.
Are they accepting nominations?
I guess I can say that Kirby Puckett Place has been also named in front of Target Field now. In conjunction with the All-Star Game, we added Kirby Puckett as a commemorative street name to 7th Street, and also Rod Carew as a commemorative street name to 2nd Avenue North, also over there by Target Field.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, I had one that, I think a lot of you talked about the sea of parking lots and how it looked around the Metrodome for 30 years. I think there was sort of a communal sense that something has to be different this time. What was kind of the attitude among the city planners that, how did you put that into action in terms of making it different this time versus with the Metrodome?
I think it's just luck this time around. I think Wells Fargo, in conjunction with Ryan, saw a really great opportunity with the new stadium and with the stadium or the light rail transit station being right there, and to bring what they're going to do is bring 5,000 employees into those two buildings. right there. And I think that, I mean, there's theory that stadiums aren't catalysts for development, but I think one could argue in Minneapolis it possibly is a catalyst for development. And I think the excitement there with all of the surface parking lots, there's a cost to obviously purchase the parking lots from, like, say, the Star Tribune or whatnot, but I think the development costs are lower because there isn't a lot of stuff to have to come down, and so people are building. And also, in this case, the Star Tribune was ready to leave, and they own 5 blocks, all 5 blocks that were purchased for the Ryan development, including what is now the Commons area out in front. The Star Tribune was finally ready to sell those 5 blocks, and so as a major landholder in this area, it was an opportunity to do something different.
Excellent. Any last questions? Okay, well, it all is very exciting, and I know I'm really excited that there's all these cranes downtown. It seemed like we kind of went through a drought there for a while where there wasn't a lot happening, and so to see the skyline lit up with construction and new towers and beams going up, not to mention all the transit and transportation improvements, is really good news for our region. So before you head back, we do want to present you with a thank you gift for your presentation today. So help me thank Hillary, Jim, and Jeff for their presentations.